Hello, and welcome to the For We Are Many podcast. My name is Rob.
Hi, I'm Trisha.
And I am the guest Russian, Talia.
The guest Russian.
Yes.
Hell yeah.
Because cool titles are cool.
And I am Wade the Hidden.
Wade the Hidden. Wade, it's nice to actually have you on a stream finally. We've tried it a couple times, but we got lucky and it worked this time.
I actually just decided to change browsers.
Oh.
And
it's amazing
it
how
worked.
It works.
That is crazy how that works. I am currently sharing the stream to groups on Facebook. A big part of the show tonight is going to be discussing Ukraine and Russia. We've all seen a shit ton of bad takes or just simply uninformed takes. And we're going to try to shed some light on the situation because there's a lot to it and there's a long history to the conflict that is going on today.
There's definitely more shiitakes than a Japanese farm.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, and so I will know that is the primary reason that I am here right now. I have been studying the Russian situation extensively over the past few months. Really, ever since the escalation started last year, I've really stepped up and re-intensified my studies on the region in really post-Soviet Russian history. So that is why this podcast was so gracious enough to invite me here, and I'm very honored to be here. And hopefully I'll be able to help shed some light and also be here to answer any questions that you guys may have.
Awesome. We appreciate it. Thank you, Tyler.
I can't, no problem. I can't help but notice that Emperor Palpatine is joining us. So
nice.
Let the chaos commence. Hello, James and Emily. And our one Twitch viewer. We have a viewer on Twitch. That's exciting. Are you friend or foe?
No IFF squawk. Fox 2.
Goodness.
God, I played way too much Ace Combat in my life.
It's been kind of rolling the dice lately. We've gotten a few trolls that have been entertaining.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, it's okay. My goal is to sound like a conservative to you guys, a liberal to the conservatives, a leftist to the far right, and I don't want to ever say far right or to the leftist. So I just simply aim to be a purveyor of historical and modern fact, which sucks because I can't get independent into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing is, unfortunately, unlike Vladimir Posner, I am not an independent journalist. I am simply a thinker and a student of history and arguably a historian because guess who actually has a history degree?
That's what's said.
And what does that mean, Jack Shedd?
I consider myself an amateur historian.
I mean, hey, it's still as long as you actually reach it, that's important. So.
As you see, I have a handful of books.
I have books, except I'm currently moving, and they are all packed up in boxes at the new place, ready to be unpacked.
We have Chelsea and Kyle.
We have both of us.
Welcome, Chelsea and Kyle.
Hi, Kyle.
Hey, how's it going?
I will be right back. It's getting chilly in here. I got to kick my heater on. Sorry.
That's fair.
Yep.
Shouldn't be as chilly as last night, though. It was 34 degrees here in fucking Phoenix, Arizona.
That's pretty impressive.
It's like he's rubbing it in your face.
No, when it was 60 degrees and sunny earlier, that was rubbing it in the face.
Yeah, no, you guys definitely have cold nights, though. Like, even during the summer and stuff, right?
What was that?
You have relatively cool nights. Like, it gets... You don't really have humidity.
Oh, in the summer.
So there's pretty big swings.
I mean, for most of the summer, yes. But, the hottest month, it's just, 90-degree lows and 110-degree highs.
There's no hot
Aye.
dogs,
Terrible.
James. I need
It
to
was
know
9
my
degrees this morning when I went to work.
Chili dogs, I get it.
It's shrimp boil night tonight.
Yes.
Yeah, no, having a grill in 15-degree weather, so I'll take it.
Fair. Okay, so I guess context on the situation there is. Do you just want to like take it from the top and give us a brief rundown of the history of the regions in question?
Okay,
Namely,
I would love to. So, for anyone, actually, I'm just going to start with the most relevant period of history, and that is the post-fall of Soviet Union. So, essentially, NATO expansion into Eastern Europe, Russian attempts to enter NATO, and all the steps that essentially followed. So, of course, as we all know, back in 1991, the Soviet Union was disbanded, essentially in the back of the woods, by Boris Yeltsin and a couple of other SSR presidents, or Soviet. I hate even saying SSR presidents because that makes absolutely zero sense. But essentially, the Soviet Union was agreed to be disbanded. And so as a result, you have all these new states like Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Ukraine. In the case of a misspeak, I do apologize. And what essentially you have happened is Russia is now on its own, an independent state, no longer part of the Soviet Union, and loses a lot of its relevance, is very economically weak. It takes on the entire debt of the Soviet Union, and they essentially dig themselves into a very deep hole. And then you have, Boris Yeltsin, who, with all due respect, was not exactly the greatest president in the history of the world. And Russia just keeps falling deeper and deeper and deeper into it. Vladimir Putin then takes over after the 1999 South Ossetia War, and this is where things really do start to get interesting. Putin actually expresses interest in having Russia join NATO, and his request essentially was, let us skip some of the steps, let us join the alliance, that way we can be friends. It's like in the 80s, especially between the Russians and Americans, it was like, oh hey Gorby, we're all going to be friends one day. And as we know, Russia has now essentially been thrust into irrelevance by the West. And so after Putin's request to skip some of the steps and joining NATO were denied, you then start to see NATO expansion keep growing and growing and growing to the point where there are several countries on the Russian border that are part of NATO, particularly the Baltic states. And now Ukraine, ethnic Russian, I have a habit of saying the Ukraine, just to start saying the Ukraine region of Russia, apparently. But essentially you have the Ukraine now becoming closer and closer to the West. And this may not be as big of an issue if NATO agreed that Ukraine would never join. However, in 2008, there was a statement given by NATO that Georgia and the Ukraine would be welcome into NATO if they so chose. And this is essentially when you see a very sharp turning point in the rhetoric and actions of Vladimir Putin. Prior to 2008 and prior to, I believe it was in Bucharest, the Bucharest decree essentially stating that Ukraine and Georgia would be welcomed into the alliance, while Russia would not be welcomed in. That Putin then says, okay, I have interests I have to protect. Russia will no longer be part of, or Russia will not be welcomed into the western part of the world, or will no longer be welcomed into the West. So this is when you see Putin secure his assets in Georgia. And then after the Maidan revolution, or the so-called revolution of decency, overthrows Viktor Yanukovych's government and essentially has the rise of a pro-Western government, that is when you see Putin start using his military assets in Russia to first and foremost annex the Crimea in order to secure the port of Sevastopol. Because let's be honest here, the only reason the Crimea really matters to Russia is that Black Sea port, because warm water ports, if you know much about Russian history, has played a extremely significant role in where Russia has decided to invade and try to conquer, just to have those warm water ports. And in case you don't know what a warm water port is, essentially it means that it is never iced over at any point in the year. So while the Arctic Ocean ports may have ice and may become impassable, a warm water port is always able to have ships dock, have goods offloaded. Essentially, it's so commerce can continue. And in the Ukraine, you have the Crimea be annexed for Sevastopol, but then you have the region of the Donbass, which now has the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics. And notice I am using the Russian pronunciations here. That is just simply as a result of my background. Just like I still spell Kiev K-I-E-V instead of K-Y-I-V. Personal preference. I tend to use a Russian spelling. And so you have these mostly ethnic Russian areas that Putin is sending assets in order to take over. That is well agreed upon. That these are Russian forces being used in an attempt to take over these areas and secure them for the Russian government. And then essentially you have things essentially remain in a stalemate for several years. Russia is continually given secondary status in the world stage by the West. And essentially Putin's goal is to ensure that Russia maintains a relevance in the wider world. And so just kind of backtrack a little bit to why Russia not being allowed into NATO by skipping a few steps is so significant. Simply put, it is the West saying to Russia essentially, oh, well, you lost the Cold War. Now you get to go be a loser and you get to stand in line with all the other insignificant countries that are nowhere near as powerful as you that we don't care at all about. Essentially, screw you, get in line, get in back. You can go through the entire process just like everyone else. And so throughout this entire instance of Russia just constantly be kicked off to the curb, essentially Putin had enough of it, and the Russian people have had enough of it. The relations between America and Russia are not only the lowest that they've ever been, they're also the most distrustful that they have ever been. And this is where I'm drawing very heavily from Vladimir Posner's talk that he gave at Yale a few years ago called How the United States Created Putin. And essentially, and this was given a few years ago, but it's still relevant today. Back in 1983, the NATO alliance, I believe with a couple of non-NATO states as well, conducted what was called Able Archer 83, essentially a military war game that simulated a full-out nuclear strike. And there was actually a glitch in a Russian computer system that showed nuclear missiles being launched at Russia, while a lone individual, I wish I could remember his name right now, was like, this doesn't make sense to me. I believe that this is a glitch. And he decided not to retaliate despite orders to the contrary, either despite orders or despite conventional wisdom to the contrary. And that took a very significant level of trust in order to not launch nukes. And so that level of trust that we once had is gone now. My greatest fear about this conflict breaking out, and this is me editorializing a bit, I do apologize for going outside my bounds. My main concern with this conflict is not necessarily an intentional nuclear strike, it is an accidental nuclear strike and an accidental nuclear exchange, if you will. That is a very real concern that, despite my personal opinions about the war, definitely do concern me about Putin's incursion into the Ukraine. No matter the result, we do have to definitely be concerned about what the accidental ramifications may be in the near future.
That's fair. So this whole thing started back in this conflict, I should say, started back in what 2014, right?
2014 is correct. Yes.
Okay. So this has been building up for 8 years, and I mean, in terms of troop movements, how would you feel if you were in Putin's shoes and NATO was massing troops in Poland?
So I think having the massing troops in Poland argument is a little bit different compared to what Putin is doing. A better comparison may be NATO amassing troops in the 3 Baltic states, so in Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. But ultimately, if I were Putin and if I were in the Kremlin right now, or well, not right now, but let's just say 2 years back, and I'm looking at the situation, and I am seeing an increasingly more likely risk of the Ukraine being admitted into NATO, I would have to ask myself, how am I going to stop this? And I believe that one of my main answers would be to either have a buildup around the Ukraine and an attempt to get an agreement to have the Ukraine never be admitted into NATO, or I would actually go in like he is now with that same intention. And so I'm just going to answer the question that just came in real quick. Assuming NATO chooses not to intervene in the Ukraine, what is the likelihood of additional conflicts in the region? Do I think Putin would continue beyond the Ukraine? So beyond the Ukraine, the only region that I can really see Putin going into would be in Moldova, namely the Transnistria region. I know I'm grossly mispronouncing that. I do apologize. Mostly because that is a area in Moldova, very small, very tiny, that actually still flies the Soviet flag. So I could see Putin going in there, but beyond that, I do not see him going anywhere else, simply due to the fact that he does not want to risk triggering Article 5, not because of the European members of NATO, but because he does not want to get involved with the United States in any sort of kinetic armed conflict.
Okay. So like the Minsk agreements, the ceasefire that they had been operating under, it seems to me like Ukraine has broken that ceasefire agreement in more than one way and more than one time. So like if we were to turn the tables, right, and it was the U.S. I'm trying to think of how to word it. If it was the U.S. in Russia's shoes, it would be a completely different conversation.
Yeah.
Is, I guess, basically the point that I'm trying to make.
Yeah, and I feel like you're kind of echoing on James's sentiment here, and you're exactly correct. And so, the overall idea of the Minsk Accords or the Minsk Agreement was very good. Essentially, it gives special status to the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics in an attempt to quell the fighting, which in and of itself is a very good idea, and I wish that it could have worked. Ultimately, though, as we've witnessed, both sides, well, I should say all sides, have really broken the agreement on multiple fronts, or that's a terrible term to use here, in multiple ways. For example, the DPR and LPR, continue fighting and actually, firing at the Ukrainians and vice versa, as well as the DPR and LPR, for all intents and purposes, not being given the special status that they were supposed to have been given.
Well, yeah, Ukraine won't even directly negotiate.
Exactly. And that goes to say that basically tells you everything that you need to know about how intact the agreement was. So basically, in contract law, I say this as someone who's in law school right now. Best example I can give is that whenever you get to the point of there being a material breach, like you still have to uphold your end of the bargain, even if the other person has clearly broken their end of the deal, just as an effort of good faith. Because I believe that the Minsk Agreement was legally binding. I may be wrong about that, but I believe it was. And so once it got to the point where it was clear that one side was not going to uphold their end of the bargain, then it is fair for the other side to pull out. Now, I'm, of course, me not necessarily being a big fan of war in any sense of the imagination. I'm not going to comment any further on that. So I will yield back.
What is your take on this fascist government that took over in Ukraine as of that coup in 2014? Because from what I'm seeing, the people who are the separatists in those two regions, they declared their independence in 2014, going, well, wait a minute, we don't want anything to do with this government that was just formed via coup. And I feel like they have the right to go, no, we get to assert our independence, have it recognized, but that fascist government has caused a lot of harm. To me, I question their validity themselves, because they wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Western influence.
Yeah, and so those legitimacy questions, I believe, are definitely fair. And so I know that a couple of my friends are watching this right now who are not as well up to date with why we're using the term fascist here regarding the current government in Kiev. And that is mostly due to the fact that there were several battalions, so to speak, or factions during the so-called Revolution of Dignity that were using Nazi insignia such as the SS symbol, and I also believe the German eagle on a few occasions as well. I don't want to say for sure one way or the other on the swastika front. Yes, there you are right there. Also lightning bolts. And so there was a lot of, and I believe very fair arguments that there were a lot of pro-Nazi, if not flat-out neo-Nazi sentiments in during the revolution, which of course is arguably been echoed with some of the repressive laws that the Ukrainian government has passed against the Russian language, such as banning Russian print media, demanding that all print media be published in Ukrainian. This is if memory serving correctly. I did a quick refresher earlier today. And so, but to answer your actual question, I don't want to give too much of a personal opinion here because my goal is to remain as objective as possible. But ultimately, the question that everyone needs to ask is, how do you view legitimacy with regards to a government? Do you view, and this is one of those things that you may have to contextualize, do you view every system of government that is overthrown or that is installed by a coup to be legitimate or illegitimate? Or do you only view that government to be legitimate based on outside influences? So, for example, if there was a coup in, I'm just going to make up a country, or just pick a random country here, Portugal, for example, that was that had Chinese influence exerted over it, and therefore they overthrew their current system and installed a pro Maoist style of communism in the country. Would that be illegitimate because of the Chinese influence? If the answer to that question is yes, then your answer to the question of the current Ukrainian government must also necessarily be yes. So in my mind, international recognition does play a decently large part in whether or not a government is legitimate. However, that is not the only factor that, and I know I said I wasn't going to give my personal take, but here's my personal take. Due to the nature of the influence, I do believe that there was a very significant portion of the Ukrainian population that wanted stronger relations with the European Union. That is totally fair, and they also wanted to move away from being so closely tied with Russia. I do understand that. However, the level of Western influence that appears to me to have existed does seriously weigh against the current Kiev regime being legitimate. You also have all sorts of issues with alleged corruption in the Zelensky government, as well as the Petro Poroshenko regime, and to the point where Poroshenko was actually arrested under political guise. Essentially, Poroshenko appears to have been arrested for political means. And just 1 second, a channel. Let me just refresh myself on.
That's what I'm doing too. Do you want a link?
Sorry, what was that?
I said that's what I was doing too. Would you like a link?
Yes, please. Thank you.
It's from the UN.org website.
That seems somewhat legit.
I would hope.
Hashtag sarcasm.
While you guys look up that stuff, I want to add, I think that an ethical stance should definitely be a bigger facet in this than, say, influences from other areas of the world of whether they want to recognize something as valid or not. I think ethics should play a huge factor in this because there's a world of difference between, say, if in that imaginary scenario of Portugal going, you know what, we would rather go to a communist situation because we're tired of the exploitation that is happening with capitalism, versus this situation that we are really dealing with the Ukraine having been taken over by literal fucking Nazis. It's a problem. That is a huge ethical problem that, to me, I think bears more weight in this than anything else, that they absolutely have the right to go, fuck that, we're not going to be ruled by Nazis. We declared our independence when that shit happened, and now all of a sudden it's supposed to be, the brink of war because Russia recognizes that independence that they declared 8 fucking years ago.
Yeah.
I think anybody would have the right to say they don't want to be ruled by Nazis.
Yeah, and I do agree with
Amen to
that. But I do also see. I think we also need to understand the idea of those legitimate Ukrainians who genuinely were without undue Western influence, participating in the Maidan Revolution. Because there were people who genuinely did believe in that, and not everyone who participated in the revolution were Nazis. Were there a large number of fascists in the revolution? Of course, there were. And I just want to note that the ethical considerations I'm definitely with you on, 100%. And the hypothetical I just raised just so happened to be one, frankly, mostly directed towards people who do support the current regime in Kiev. Just to be like, hey, if you're trying to be consistent here, it wasn't so much directed towards people here. Just want to clarify that real quick. And also, is it okay if I answer Natalie's question real quick?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so Natalie, I do believe, so basically what I've seen, and also based on Putin's prior actions, that would not surprise me. Putin does intend to go after those groups. Religious groups, I'm a bit more skeptical on, but however, with regards to the LGBTQ plus community, there is a definite threat with that, and that is one reason that we do definitely need to be concerned about the Russian incursion into the Ukraine. Putin has demonstrated time and time again that he is no friend of the LGBTQ plus community. We've seen that based on his so-called anti-propaganda laws and things of the sort. And so I think we do definitely need to be wary of this. And is also another really good reason that we shouldn't necessarily support the current incursion.
Yeah, that's fair. And we've talked on this show quite a bit in the past about Putin. And I don't know, just in case it does need to be said, I don't think any of us are here to try to paint Putin as a good guy or anything like that. But at the end of the day, NATO shouldn't be getting involved. It doesn't mean that Putin's a good guy. It means that somehow Ukraine manages to be worse.
Right.
Yeah, and ultimately a very large portion of that, of the anti-Ukraine sentiment, I think, stemming from at least this current group right here, does stem from the fact of the way that the current Kiev regime did rise to power, I believe, due to A, the corruption, B, the influence, and also C, the beliefs of many members of the revolutionaries, or of the coup plotters or coup actors. And also, Natalie, you're welcome.
Before we forget, were you guys able to find what you needed to add context to the question about the Vienna Convention and how that would apply to the Ukraine coup?
Unfortunately, I'm still kind of sort of reading through, and I've been speed reading so much I've absorbed approximately jack shit. So,
gotcha.
Yeah, I kind of feel that, but it's a 16-page document governing diplomatic relations. But I think it's important to note that these diplomatic relationships have been broken down.
Yeah. Yeah, so honestly, I believe that there may be some relevance there. I mean, if I'm being totally honest with you, I'm just gonna have to punt on this one and just say that, frankly, I just don't know enough.
Yeah,
I'm not willing.
And yeah, we can't really spend the time to read a 16-page document on the fly.
Right, but we can look into that later and touch on that next week when we can actually fully address it, when we've had some time to read through that.
Yeah, and I do apologize for not being as well versed on that document as I should have been. Unfortunately, I can genuinely say that throughout my entire time obtaining my history degree, that the Vienna Convention came up approximately 0 times. So,
Shows
and
how
given
much
the fact that
relevance. Yeah.
yes, yeah, it is unfortunately one of those things, and I will note that I did actually write I believe it was a 33-page paper on Nikita Khrushchev and essentially on what his three strikes were that led to his ouster. So yeah, I do apologize for not knowing enough about that.
That's
it's
okay.
fine.
I mean, there's always going to be random questions on the fly that just aren't possible to be answered in the moment because it takes too much research. You know.
Yeah, and as much of a realist as I try to be, because so basically, the one thing I meant to mention in my intro is that my foreign policy stance is essentially that of realism. So if you would like to know a very influential realist thinker, John Mearsheimer. He's out of the University of Chicago, I believe. He's an excellent thinker, and you can really mirror my views and his views on foreign policy, and they basically go exactly along. They basically align perfectly. And James, I just want to comment on your issue with the sanctions. Putin is very much concerned about sanctions. So we have this idea that sanctions don't work, largely because the United States is, especially, and I'm assuming that you're in the U.S. here. The U.S. is essentially immune from a lot of sanctions right now. The last time that we felt any sort of real, arguably maybe actual effects from sanctions were back during the oil shortages of the 1970s, and that may even be a bit of a stretch. But so essentially, sanctions really do hurt. That's what got Iran to the table with the nuclear deal that is now essentially just gone, and it will definitely hurt Putin. Maybe not right now, but over the upcoming months, they will definitely hurt Putin, and it is a bloodless way to ensure that the conflict, well, maybe not ensure, but at least help the conflict either slow down or come to an end. Because the goal of
it also hurts the people in the process, depending on
it
how
does.
applied.
But ultimately, that is ultimately that's just a reality of war. The question at that point is, okay, so would you rather have the West get involved militarily and actually send troops in order to be able to fight on behalf of the Ukraine, or would you rather have them use these sanctions that will result in much less bloodshed? That's essentially the dichotomy that we'll be facing right here.
I mean, I would like to have the U.S. focus on the U.S. and leave the rest of the world alone. Preferably.
Yeah, but unfortunately, that's just not the reality that we live in. That is what we prefer. But given the alternative of the U.S. going to war against Russia, I would much prefer sanctions. And if I'm being honest with you, I have not been a fan of the Biden presidency whatsoever, especially given the fact that gas has gone up more than double where I live, and definitely, and as a dancer, it definitely does restrict on where I can go for work. But at the same time, this is the one thing I can confidently say that he absolutely nailed. The sanctions, he isn't going all in right away. He's giving Putin a chance to come to the bargaining table, and ultimately, concessions are going to have to be made by the West in order to end this conflict. What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to agree to never allow the Ukraine into the NATO alliance. That is Putin's number one thing. You're also probably going to have to take Georgia off the table and agree to not have Moldova enter into the alliance as well. I don't think Putin would require there to be essentially a kicking out of the Baltic states. But as long as you agree to not allow Georgia, the Ukraine, or Moldova into the alliance, I think that he would be willing to roll his troops back.
Yeah, but what happens if that doesn't work?
Well, then you just have an all-out war. But ultimately, I don't think that would not work. Putin ultimately is not an unreasonable man. He can be reasoned with, and he's also not stupid. He knows what the limits of Russia are. He knows he cannot stand up to the entirety of NATO. He knows that if Article 5 gets triggered, he's fucked. And so really the best way for him to handle that would be to essentially force Ukraine to the table and be able to achieve his agenda that way rather than simply through conquest. Because even if he does, take over the entirety of the Ukraine and either absorb it into the Russian Federation or have a puppet installed, that would only encourage NATO to welcome Moldova and Georgia into the NATO alliance. In which case, does he really win? I think ultimately his goal is to get those concessions and to have as little bloodshed as possible, because that's the best way to shore up his legacy.
That makes sense.
Since we are on the topic of this extending to resources, I'd like to bring up this gas pipeline that has been getting, put in place to be built from Russia to Germany.
Yeah, Nord Stream 2.
What's that?
Nord Stream 2. I was just clarifying which one we were talking about.
Thank you. Yes. And this would be a huge benefit to the people of Germany and probably other parts of Europe that have been literally dying for some more natural gas because they need that to heat their homes, and they've had shortages there to the extreme. And here Russia is going, okay, let's build this pipeline. We can supply you. But that's also a threat to the Western monopolization of fossil fuel resources. And I think that this is a huge facet that is affecting this whole situation that is not even being discussed enough, because that does come into play when it comes to the games of politics being played here.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. And that was a huge concession for Germany too. But when it was initially being discussed, the U.S. and Ukraine were very adamant about not allowing it to move forward.
Yeah, and so the Nord Stream 2 pipeline issue, the fact that Germany actually took that off, it refused a certification. And the fact that natural gas is being used so extensively in Germany and so many parts of Europe for heating does say a lot. And I know that electric heating methods are typically more expensive, but I believe that you'll probably see a rise in electric water heaters and electric furnaces as a result of this. But the fact that Germany was able to take Nord Stream 2 off the pipeline really goes to show just how much this incursion actually means to the Western powers. And with regards to there being a vice grip over natural resources, I see the point there. But ultimately, I believe that it is still the ultimate goal, no matter which way we phrase it, isn't so much about the resources as much as it is about installing a liberal democracies and nation building essentially all over the world. Because liberal hegemony has been the foreign policy position of the West, particularly the United States, ever since the fall of the Soviet Union. We saw it in Afghanistan, we saw it in Iraq, we saw it during the Arab Spring, and through other portions of the world as well. And it has failed at every single point. And so while I definitely do see your point here, I just think that it isn't necessarily at the top of the priority list right now for the West. Because liberal hegemony ultimately is the goal. And while living in a liberal democracy is great, there's definitely a hell of a lot of worse systems out there. It's just simply not applicable to every single nation. And that is what the U.S. is trying to install in every single nation around the globe.
That's pretty accurate.
One size fits all.
Essentially, that's what the goal is.
The problem, though, that I see that is inherent to every one of those situations on that list is that it's typically installation of very fascist-leaning liberal democracies. And that's problematic in and of itself.
Fascist. Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's how this has led to the Nazification of Ukraine over all the last decade or so. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Nazification, do you take Putin at his word about demilitarizing and denazifying Ukraine?
Okay, sorry. I just have to chuckle a little bit here, because I think I do understand where Putin is coming from with what he says, but if I'm being totally honest with you, no, I don't. The ultimate goal of Putin, the first and foremost goal, like I said earlier, is stopping NATO expansion into the Ukraine. But ultimately, as he said, the collapse of the Soviet Union was the greatest geopolitical disaster of the 20th century. And I believe I'm quoting him correctly there. And his goal is not so much to rebuild the Soviet Union, because he doesn't want to install another communist state. His goal ultimately is to, at least to the grace of his ability, reestablish the Russian Empire.
Yeah, he alluded to that in, what was it, Monday? He gave his speech to the Russian people, and he alluded to that lens.
Exactly. Yeah, and that was really the main goal of that speech, obviously. And so ultimately, whenever you have these kind of dichotomies, the denazification is, frankly, in his mind, a good excuse to use because of how dear the Great Patriotic War is to Russians. You know, the Victory Day parades are still going strong, even almost, well, this is going to be the 77th anniversary of the end of the Great Patriotic War. Very dear to the hearts of Russians, very important to very many people. And so it's an excellent excuse to use for going in. How effective is it? I'm not on the ground in Russia. I don't have enough of an idea of what people are thinking in Russia right now to really comment on that. But ultimately, that was just a purely rhetorical move. That is not one of his main goals. In the demilitarization aspect of it, that was just an attempt for any people who may sympathize with him to lay down their arms, or an excuse for him to actually use his troops in a offensive manner.
Fair.
And John, to answer your question, everything.
I know, right?
The history of Ukraine, more or less, is what you missed, John. To give a lot of context on what's going down today.
I think I've actually remained relatively objective here, so I'm kind of proud of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I see your points, but I don't know if I'm so objective. I mean, like, I'm not saying Putin's a good guy, but if I had to pick a side here, it wouldn't be NATO's.
My only comment on this is no comment, but you all know what my ethnic background is, so that's all I'm going to say on that.
Fair enough.
And I know that I don't know you guys very well, but the sarcastic smirk usually says everything you need to know.
Yeah. So Chelsea and Kyle, I know that you got.
No, I'm sitting here like thinking, no, it's totally fine. My problem is just with why is the U.S. interested in this? And so basically, whatever the U.S. is doing, I just don't trust whatever their side is, because there's some other reason, and it doesn't matter what the fucking reason is.
I think it's pretty simple.
I mean, I'm not coming from this from trying to pick a side, because it doesn't matter, but I know who the U.S. has been funding, so if I'm gonna pick one, I'm gonna pick that. And that's only because that is the U.S. that's making the decision. Otherwise, it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't be like we're involved. But now we are. And we know that every single thing that the U.S. decides to be involved in is a fucking nightmare. So...
Yeah, we do have a good tendency of fucking things up. And so I'm just actually sorry to cut you off, Chelsea. I'm just
you're
gonna
fine. I mean,
in.
I don't really have much to go on other than that. I just don't trust the U.S.'s intentions in this, and so it doesn't really matter either way for anything.
Okay, gotcha. So just to answer A Channel's question, what will the impact of this conflict being on Russia. There have been some protests, but that's to be expected. What do I think will happen on that front going forward? So this is actually going to be very interesting, and this is where the sanctions will really come into play. So my first approach is going to be is if the sanctions never were put into place. So without any sanctions being put into place, there would still be some protests, but ultimately Putin's popularity would soar because a lot of Russians ultimately see Ukraine as their brothers and sisters. In fact, Russians will oftentimes refer to Ukrainians as little Russians, which of course many Ukrainians take exception to, but that is ultimately in many cases more term of endearment rather than a term of kind of putting down. So that's if the sanctions were never put in place or absolutely fail, which is unlikely given how severe they are. With the sanctions being put into place, though, is where things get really, really interesting. And that is where we're really going to have to see how dedicated are the Russian people to this fight. I tend to believe that they are fairly dedicated to it. So while Putin may suffer a little bit once the sanctions start to bite, the more and more success that he has inside of the Ukraine, the more and more popular the decision to go to war will be, and the stronger and stronger the Russian resolve will become. And what people tend to forget is just how resilient the Russian people are. They forget that the Russians ultimately were the ones who really kicked the shit out of Napoleon. The Russians are the ones who, the Soviets are the ones who really won the Second World War. Without the Soviet Union, Germany almost surely wins. Russians are great fighters. They also essentially defeated the Swedish Empire as well. I believe that was Pultowa was really the final nail in the coffin for that for Sweden. And so the Russians are very resilient. The question is, will they be as resilient as they have been in the past in the current day? If the answer to that question is yes, I believe Putin will remain popular. If the answer to that question is no, things could become seriously unstable inside of the Russian Federation to the point where Putin will likely be forced to pull out of the Ukraine. And I do not see the Putin regime continuing on much long, or very long after that.
And he's taken some interesting steps in the past, like for goods that were generally imported, and I assume it's things that he was worried about being sanctioned, to develop those within the country, such as meat. Like he had a crazy program. Not crazy. I just mean like for the way he ramped up on meat production and stuff, and the people that he invited and stuff in to facilitate that. The skills that he tried to do really fast.
And ultimately, the main thing that is going to harm Putin right now is going to be the semiconductor and electronics sanctions. China can replace some of that, but will they be able to replace enough of it to offset all the sanctions from the Western countries? The answer to that question, I believe, is a very resounding no. And that may be where Putin ultimately suffers the most, because you have the Russian Federation, which is this massive piece of land with most of the population and industrial power being focused in the European portion of the country. And what may ultimately end up happening is Russia ends up losing the war of attrition. As of in the past, we really see Russia be able to use their industrial power with some assistance, like in the Great Patriotic War, with assistance from the U.S. in order to be able to really beat back Nazi Germany. But the moment you take away that technological capability in the advanced fighters and advanced tanks with all the advanced weaponry and all that require these semiconductors and these chips, you may really start to see the Russian military be significantly crippled.
One of the things I was surprised about was a lot of countries sort of started modernizing their military fairly recently. Like, I mean, they kind of got into an old pattern, and Russia's included in that. After they invaded Georgia, they had to work a lot harder than they expected to quell that, and I'm kind of wondering if this plays into what you're talking about as far as that kind of opened my eyes to how many defense companies from the U.S. that they get products from, and I'm wondering if that touches on what you're talking about as far as that.
To an extent, yes. Not so much from the defense companies as much as just like general electronics items.
Okay.
Because for the most part, at least to the best of my knowledge, Russia's defense industry is mostly self-contained. So unlike the U.S., which gets an absolutely mind-boggling amount of its parts, like chips and all that from China. I believe that the F-35 has several Chinese chips in it, as well as other weapon systems having a lot of Chinese parts. I believe Russia is mostly in-house on that, but don't quote me on that. Because I know the Sukhoi 57 Felon, or the Su-57 Felon, was initially a Russian-India joint venture, but that India dropped out, so it's now solely a Russian venture. The Sukhoi 35 is Russian. Russia does a very good job of maintaining everything in-house. That includes rifles and all those other things. Okay, and so all right, I'm just going to kind of cut off that line of question, if that's cool with you. And I'm just going to move on to a John's comment real quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think we will see a first-class war break out between Russia and the U.S. I honestly would see China getting involved in that war if it does become a first-class conflict. In which case, I don't even want to consider how catastrophic the result of such a war would be. It would reshape the world, but not to the point where we're talking about superpowers. I will say that much. Because I think we still are viewing a potential war through the lens of World War II, where, there may be some nukes and all that, or a very long drawn conflict without any real lasting ecological consequences. I still abide by Einstein's principle, though, of I know not what weapons World War III will be fought with, or World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. That's just a type of conflict that I don't even want to imagine, if I'm being totally honest with you. And I'm not one to shy away from serious dystopian shit like that. That's how concerned I am about that.
Yeah, I tend to agree with what you said, that China would probably get involved in that point. They have, this far anyway, been very, neutral, which I think says a lot. I mean, they're trying to, balance their trade with the U.S. and they're, not fuck that up and not fuck up their trade with Russia. But their relations have been increasing for years at this point. And I guess just to draw a parallel about Taiwan a lot.
Yeah, and ultimately, I do see World War III starting over Taiwan more than I see World War III starting over the Ukraine. I will say that much. Simply due to the fact that the Ukraine is on the European continent and Taiwan is not.
That's a fair point, actually. I hadn't really considered that. You mentioned at the beginning that there was an update that Russia was going to start a bombing campaign.
I haven't seen any updates on that, so I'm just going to assume that was just that message I got was inaccurate.
Fair enough.
Yeah, because it was supposed to start within 10 minutes, and I have not seen anything anything since then. So at this point, I'm just going to assume that was bad info.
That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I've had this this stream up of this square in Kiev, and I haven't seen anything.
Yeah, and it is possible as well that the initial plans were for Russia to do that, but based on some of the situation, some of the stuff on the ground, such as the Kiev airport not being as secured as Russia probably expected it to be by now, that may have caused things to be that may cause plans to change as well.
Right. That's very true too.
Yeah, honestly, my question for
But I
about currently,
mean, how much of a resistance can the Ukraine put up?
they're
Like
putting up
at
a
the
damn
moment.
good one right now. They are really putting up a damn good resistance right now. The fact that they're actually taking territory, taking things back from the Russians is not necessarily to be unexpected, but the fact that they are in and of itself, for them being as outclassed as they are, is remarkable. But ultimately, the only thing that the Ukraine can do is slow down Russia. They will, in all likelihood, they will not be able to defeat them. And my guess, if I'm being totally honest with you right now, is that President Zelensky has left the capital. My guess is he's either in Lviv or
I
is
wouldn't
outside
be
the
surprised
country.
if he's in Poland. He said
Yeah,
in 3 different fucking addresses or conversations with other world leaders today that he was not leaving the country, and that tells me that he is for sure leaving the country.
yeah. Honestly, I don't think he's even in Poland. I think he's probably in Germany.
Really?
Yeah.
So that kind of brings another question in, as far as so I mean, or I guess everybody's kind of touched on it as far as Angela Merkel. Did I say that right?
Yeah, Angela Merkel.
Merkel. Yeah. See, I'm butchering names again. So as far so you had mentioned about like the as far as our negotiations about taking the gas off the table, and like that's a big deal because I mean even Biden had, I don't know, he clumsily said something about that we just work around the issue of shutting gas off, shutting the pipeline off, and I'm like there's no, just me internally speaking, like there's no way that you can do that without killing people.
Right.
How much of that is Merkel being complicit with those needs versus, well, I mean, I guess being
Well,
Germany, whatever.
time out. It's Chancellor Scholz now, right?
Yeah. Merkel's been
Yeah.
out for a while now. But to answer your question,
But she was involved in the
yeah.
Minsk agreements.
Yeah, ultimately we're in 20. Obviously, we're talking about the current political situation now. And truth be told, the fact that Germany waited until the very last minute to refuse to certify the pipeline speaks volumes about how little they actually wanted to do that. Whenever people are cold, that is just like if people are starving. The risk of unrest is extremely high and would be too high for a government to simply do that willy-nilly. They do understand how risky it is. They understand how much hurt it will cause. They understand that there likely will be some fatalities. I'm assuming that the German government has some sort of plans to mitigate that. So, and I know that Japan was actually going to be given a excess of liquefied natural gas from the United States, and so instead of Japan receiving that, that will instead be diverted over to European countries. I believe Germany is going to be the main recipient of that gas. And the other important thing, though, to remember as well is that Nord Stream 2 was not yet active. Now, the Nord Stream 1 pipeline, that may be a different story if that does get shut down. But ultimately, because I don't believe that all of the gas has been completely shut off from Russia has been completely shut off. Is that correct, or am I wrong on that? Because I believe that Europe is still receiving Russian gas.
I can't imagine them cutting that off. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know enough,
exactly.
but
I mean, I don't know the answer in short either, but I cannot imagine that they would be doing very well without Russian gas.
Yeah, and so I think that ultimately they're putting in place emergency measures to receive gas from other areas to wean their dependence on Russian gas, especially if Russia decides to cut that off, which is still a very real possibility. But then that could theoretically trigger Article 5 of NATO, not to mention all the fact that the gas would primarily target civilians, which would be an absolute disaster for Russia to try to do something like that. So I don't
On
see
the other hand, Moscow froze their stock markets today. I know we're
really,
not talking at that point. We're talking about
I mean, I
shutting
heard that.
down a casino rather than, you know,
I mean, because I did,
but
yeah, because I did know that the Russian stocks absolutely crashed, and like I think it was like the fourth or fifth worst crash in stock history. So it was an absolutely massive hit, and then the ruble is trading at the lowest that it's ever traded throughout the currency's history against the U.S. dollar. So I mean, Russia is already paying massive financial, it's already paying a massive financial losses, or is already incurring massive financial losses. Plus the fact that the Russian government or the Russian central bank is already having to start dispersing funds to banks and companies in order to keep them afloat right now. So things are already very dire for Russia economically. The question is, how bad will it get? That is possible, Natalie. The number that I'm seeing on my screen right now is 33%, but it could very well be worse than that. I do not know exactly what the numbers were. But either way, though, it is really bad because I'm seeing on Yahoo right now that it was 33%, and I believe that they're citing Bloomberg for that. Okay, yeah, so it closed 33% lower. But the next big question will be, will Russia be cut out of SWIFT, which is essentially the payment system for the oil and everything else? If Russia is cut out of SWIFT, we're talking about a whole different ballgame. I just want to be abundantly clear with that. Russia gets cut out of SWIFT, you're going to see massive ramifications for that in Russia, and that's when you're going to see gas get cut off. And so I think that that's really why Germany is being pretty hesitant on putting that thing in place, because that's really a nuclear option. No pun intended, of course, but and I think that's also why Biden is also very hesitant to say that we're going to be cutting Russia out of SWIFT, is because we know that if we do that, people are going to greatly suffer. Yeah, I believe the ruble, was it the ruble? Because I know a couple of Russian stocks did go down by 50%, but the market as a whole went down by 33%.
Well, and the way that the markets ebb and flow throughout the day, it could have hit a point of being 50% lower and still come back up some and wobbled some more before closing time.
Yeah, but either way though, whenever you're in a system like this, especially in a nation that is being just absolutely hammered by the international community, you're not going to see a stock rebound by 17%. You could in theory, but the odds of that happening would be extremely slim. Not to be I'm not rude or anything in my response there. So
just in I've seen crazy shit happen with the stock market, and I haven't looked at that today to see specifically what the Russian stocks ebbs and flows were throughout the day. But
I'm actually gonna see if I can there we go. Let's pull up the Moscow exchange.
Yeah, if you can find something good, feel free to screen share too.
Yeah.
See what I can find.
Oh wow, yeah. So the futures in the U.S. are down a fair bit. About 135 points for the Dow. So we're going anywhere from about down 0.5% to nearly 1% for the Nasdaq. Chart, there we go. Yeah. So yeah, so it looks like that chart, it was down about 20%, but I don't know. That's kind of, I almost wonder if I'm looking at the wrong thing. Let me just go over to Bloomberg because I'm better and I'm more familiar with Bloomberg's stocks.
And depending when you looked, because like this morning, I don't know, I was doom and gloom, and it had actually rebounded more than I thought it would.
Yeah, I was really surprised with how the U.S. stocks did, if I'm being totally honest with you.
Yeah, same.
But of course, Russia is just getting absolutely pounded right now. So that's kind of the one thing that I do. Europe. Let's see, Euro. Not looking at that. Denmark, France, Turkey, Bahrain, Deutschland, Russia. There we go. Yeah. So the Russian index was down 33% today. down about 1,000 points.
There's an article I just found that's saying, that it wiped 200 billion from stocks today.
Yeah, which that just kind of goes to show just how much the hurt will be, and that's the level of hurt that will be felt if the
actually dictating what is going on.
that will be felt by the everyday Russian. So these sanctions will bite, because and remember that this stock drop was actually from before the sanctions were officially announced by the U.S. That's a really important distinction to make, and I believe that the market closed even before the UK announced their sanctions.
Also, I'm not sure what happened in the time since either, but there is something posted here from 3 days ago saying that the stock market had fallen by 17% that day too. So it's taken a few hits.
Yeah. So yeah, I see. I see the day that you're referring to. But yeah, either way, it's going to be absolutely brutal for the Russian people, and ultimately this is a cost of war.
That must be Rob's problem.
It's got to be Rob's dogs. Yeah, he said he would be
Rob's
back.
problem.
Hold up, let me see. I can probably mute his mic. There we go. All right. That was Revolution Shay Occupuppy and Mario announcing their presence.
Yeah, and to answer James earlier, if I don't know things, then I don't open my mouth. But really, I only have more opinions about the U.S. trying to get involved than I do about the. I'm like, I don't feel like I need to necessarily, like, it's interesting to hear about. Like, I'm glad that we're talking about this, but like, I'm also not just going to be like, I know all of these things, because I don't. So.
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, it is important because especially after 2016, and I'm going to sound like a holier than thou type right now. I'm not trying to, but I did eventually take up the practice of not forming an opinion about something until I knew about it.
Sometimes I'm quiet, sometimes I'm not. So this is one of those times where I'm just like, I don't have anything to say. So
that's why we do ask you about this.
Do I trust the U.S.? No, I do not. But everything else is much more complex than that. And I think the problem is that everybody is mostly just taking a side right away when they don't listen to conversations like these whenever we're actually laying down what the conflicts are. So, yeah.
Right. There's no clear lines that can be drawn of, oh, this is the good guy and this is the bad guy, because nothing in reality is that fucking simple.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely.
Like, I would rather ask more questions. Go ahead, Kyle.
One of the examples I used is a friend was joking with me. It's like, oh, so you don't support Ukraine? Like, just being cheeky with me. I'm like, yeah, I know you're asking me to pick the lesser of two evils. Now, if you ask me which side was less homophobic, I'm in a bit of a pickle. Like, it's, you know what I mean? Like, we can direct this as far as like socio-political, just in this particular scenario, I think it is, I don't know. It's we can divide ourselves however we want, but I think it's easy to see what's going on from a U.S. standpoint, or to see the playbook that's being used.
I mean, there's no way that we're going to make this better.
Right.
Yeah, and even China and stuff like they're.
We never do. We never make it better. It never.
Actually, so there is a way that the U.S. can make this better here. And this is kind of like what I was saying earlier, where getting the Ukraine to the negotiating table and making some hard concessions is really going to be the best way to ensure, at least in my mind, a lasting peace. Give the guarantees that the Ukraine will never join NATO, et cetera, make it legally binding, And in that respect, the U.S. is going to be the only one who's actually going to be able to get the Ukraine to the table. Because right now, if Zelensky is like, President Putin, I want to negotiate, he's going to say, fuck you. And you really have to you really have to have the U.S. get involved there, because frankly, the U.S. is the only power that Russia respects enough to actually listen to, or at least be able to reason with, especially whenever it comes to something as significant as having the Ukraine come to the table to negotiate a peace. The question though is, will we do that?
We never do. So
Yeah.
I mean, but sometimes sometimes there's a first for everything. So I do, because it always would seem like, oh well, Russia's never going to invade, but here we are. So I do think that, especially in situations precarious as this, where we are dealing with such a nuclear superpower, that the U.S. would be willing to kind of tuck its tail a little bit and be more willing to cooperate with Russia here in an effort to avoid a nuclear conflict.
I think. No, I definitely agree on that. So one of the things I thought was interesting is that everybody, like all the major powers, are showing a lot of restraint. And I mean, obviously the U.S. is going to dickwag and supply a force that they can to they can't just blatantly overstep their bounds as much as they want to. But China, just the way that they've been handling it, saying like, yeah, this is an invasion, just cautiously, like not getting involved, but also not feeding into it. And the U.S. has done somewhat of that. They've been treading more cautious than usual.
Yeah.
And that's disturbing, as far as clearly everybody's concerned about this escalating.
Yeah, and I definitely do see your point there. And I do just want to say real quick, I'm not trying to divert from what you just said, which I do think was a very, very excellent series there. I do have to leave here in the next few minutes, so if anyone has any final questions or anything like that, definitely feel free to throw them my way. Because once I'm gone for the night, I'm gone for the night. So, because apparently I have to work or some bullshit like that, So whether that be from the people in chat or here on the podcast, definitely feel free to throw shit my way. Just not literal shit, please. I'm not into that.
Yeah, right.
I'm kind of intrigued by John's comment here, because he's a vet. He's oil and pharma horse in Washington, D.C. have our men and women on the Polish-Ukraine border as blood bait. They're praying for those troops to get killed so they can start rolling them out 10,000 at a time. And that just fucking echoes back in memory to Afghanistan, to the First Gulf War. This is what the United States does.
Yeah, and ultimately, I think Putin is going to show very strong restraint to the west of Lviv. So ultimately, what you're going to see is, I'm just going to pull up a map of the Ukraine real quick. I'm going to screen share briefly. Let's see, open in new tab, and then F11. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to go ahead and screen share here. And I do apologize for me not having a let's see, is my screen sharing? Oh, it looks like you need to let that in.
I have to add it.
There we go. All right, cool. Okay, so you have Lviv right here, and then you have like these a series of cities here that are relatively major. With Lviv essentially becoming the diplomatic center for the Western powers, because essentially the capital is probably already moved from Kiev over to this city right here. What I think what we're going to see is we're not going to see Russia move any further west from Lviv down here. And my guess is you're probably going to kind of see a bit of a arc like this all the way up here from the Belarusian border, down through here, through here, through here, through Chernivtsi. Sorry, I'm terrible with Ukrainian names. Down here to Moldova. And that's going to be a little bit of a strip there. That's basically going to be kind of the safe haven for the western for the Western powers of Ukraine. And that's going to be to make sure that Putin doesn't accidentally trigger Article 5. But accidentally doing a pot shot. That is a total guess. I don't have any real evidence to back that up, which I hate making assumptions without evidence. But I hope you do see my point.
For the unaware, could you explain the Section 5?
Here, and he's creeping
Yeah,
me out.
He's
coming in like God, and
almost like lemon reincarnated. But okay, so yeah. So basically, his question was about Article 5. And so
Yes.
just to explain what Article 5 is essentially if attack one, attack all. So if Poland is attacked by Russian forces, that triggers Article 5, which means that every single NATO power is therefore obligated to come in and attack as if they've just been attacked themselves. Article 5 has only ever been triggered once before in history, and that was after 9/11. Article 4 is essentially whenever there's a territorial concern. That has been triggered 5 times. 4 of those times have been by Turkey, mostly due to the war in Syria. All right, and I have time for one more question. Probably looks like you're looking at Tricia right now. That's perfect.
I'm trying to think, like, is there anything else?
Thank you, by the way.
No problem.
Thank
Yes, we
you for
appreciate
actually joining us tonight, Wade.
Yeah, I'm
and you too, Talia.
Yeah, I'm definitely. Oh, we're talking to Wade.
Yeah, well, okay, we've been trying to get Wade on a show for so long.
Okay, so I just got an update. Actually, it looks like that Russian forces are directly attacking Kiev.
Rob, do you still have that live stream open?
Hold on, it's not live.
I do. I am not seeing anything on the feed though.
Yeah.
But this
is
just
car
from.
drive by.
Yeah, I just saw that too. So this is actually from this is actually breaking from Fox News. So take that for what it's worth. But yeah. So this is a really big situation. Yeah, thanks, Emily. I do appreciate that. It's actually normally bright red. I just kind of got lazy as shit and was like, I don't feel like spending 8 hours just dyeing my own hair. So I just started progressively washing out the red as much as I could. So now I'm kind of stuck with this pinkish shade with blonde back. But it's okay though, because under the black light it looks platinum blonde. So I kind of fuck with it.
Well, if you ever decide to go red again, try Unicorn Hair by Lime Crime. It's deposit only, and it's like a thick conditioner. That's what I use for my purple, and it fucking turns out fabulous.
Yeah, I definitely. I actually just got a message on my strippergram. That simply says "fuck Russia," which is kind of funny. So. I love libertarians; are so much fun. Yeah. So, anyways, guys, thank you guys so much, and I definitely will go red again. I actually already have the hair dye. I just need to actually take the time out to do it. But yeah, thank you so much for having me on. And if my knowledge is ever of importance again, I will definitely join you guys again if you're gracious enough to have me on. And thank you so much, and have a nice night, guys.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Talia.
Thank you.
No problem. Also, I accept payment in beer and vodka, except Russian standard vodka only. So that's like $27 for like a 1.75 liter bottle. So
the Esky fan. Okay.
Probably unavailable.
Actually, I did get a bottle of it today, Total Wine and More, just to make sure, because in case if it does get sanctioned, no more imports. So it's gonna have to maybe go back tomorrow and buy some more, because it's like I go through like one of those every 3 months. Anyways, guys, I'm actually gonna bounce though. Thank you so much and take care.
Thank you. Please
Thank
come back
you.
and join us anytime.
All right, for sure. Bye.
Good night.
Nice.
I learned a lot.
Yeah, I didn't want to talk the whole time because I didn't want to like take away from that or anything. Because that's much needed history on things. I just don't trust the U.S.'s involvement with everything, because if we have been Nazifying them for 70 years, we've been funding this. I mean, it's not all of Ukraine, obviously, but I mean, as far as just, I mean, I would say, sorry, my screen. I mean, like, you look at the U.S. as a whole, and it's gross. But, like, we live here. We're not horrible people. So I'm, like, not trying to say, but, like, whatever the U.S.'s involvement is with the government itself, it has been the better part of 100 years. So while the U.S. could make a good decision, it seems as though they're not going to, because that's not what they've been doing to begin with. And that's my only thing with any of it. And I really don't feel like it takes much explanation to say why that would be a valid to have on the subject.
Yeah.
The U.S. is what would happen if you took a government, an organized crime syndicate, and a supervillain and mixed them all together.
Yeah. Anytime you try to say any of this, people, like I just sent you in the chat, he's like people are trying to tell me that Russians are Nazis too. And I'm just like, okay, cool. Like, we just talked about that. Maybe that's true. But we're not funding Russia to be that way. We are funding Ukraine to be that way.
I mean, we don't care what they are. They could skin babies alive. As long as they're anti-communist, we'll fund them.
And we're specifically not allowed to post specific organization links on Facebook. This is not a .com that's a hate site that is the equivalent of Alex fucking Jones. This is a .org that we are not allowed to post on Facebook.
These were declassified CIA documents.
So, I mean, something is wrong here. I mean, obviously, there is a cultural thing that we don't understand between those two countries, but at the same time, we are involved in it, and that is a problem, because the U.S. never does anything that it should do.
Pretty much. And the thing is, we've been involved in it in the wrong ways for too long already. Look, there's been like Blackwater and other American mercenary companies going over there training soldiers and militia who are literal fucking Nazis. So, like, I guess to reflect back on what we were talking about a little while ago, there is one place right there where we can draw a line of bad guy.
Sure, but I mean,
if you're a fucking Nazi, you're not a good person.
We were committing domestic, like terror attacks, and I say domestic because it just depends on the country, and they will use their internal units or whatever to do that. But I've heard a little bit about Gladio, but when I started reading into it, I was shocked at how far it went and how recent those attacks were and how blatant and flagrant they were. It's
right.
Pretty brutal. They're like, oh, you want?
I want to address Natalie's question. I'm gonna bring back up these battalion flags.
I guess we should also direct somehow toward that link that we can't post.
Can you pop it in the comments?
I can pop you my screenshot if that's what you want.
Maybe.
In
The answer is maybe.
well, I mean, because I don't have a YouTube account really.
Yes, all the time.
Oh,
Here,
you know,
I
pop
just
it in-
sent.
pop in the private chat.
I sent a screen. I've been able to send a screenshot to Facebook. So I sent a screenshot to the podcast chat, or you can go to the Discord and find
I
it
don't
there,
have,
or
I don't
the
have
Slack.
either of those on the laptop to be able to grab it. But if you do have the link and can just copy and paste it into the private chat here,
Oh,
and
okay. Okay, I'll have to type it out.
then I can put it
This is
in
gonna
the
take me a
comments
second.
from here. Okay.
Okay.
What y'all are seeing there is this fascist ass fucking military that we were referring to. Rob, if you are in our Slack, there's also photos there of McCain and others in U.S. government standing with said Nazi fascist fucking soldiers that our tellers have
Thank you
been
for posting that. I shared that, by the way.
Oh, I also sent that to Slack. So I think he did share it first. I just didn't realize, and I sent it to Slack.
Completely stole it from the chat.
Yeah, I steal everything from him. He sends me really
I would
smart
like-
shit, and I'm just like, oh yeah, that was me. I know everything.
I would like to interject here that while there is proof that they're fascist, there is no proof that they're ass fucking.
Oh my god.
I don't think.
Fuck, I can't spell. I usually can, but I can't right now.
Damn it.
So this article from Jacob saying, I'm going to put it in the comments, but it's discussing not only the situation in Ukraine and how we're backing neo-Nazi fascists, but also, like other times where we should have learned this lesson, but yet here we are again. So that's not a direct answer to you, Natalie, but the point is that they are literally neo-Nazis. They are flying swastika flags.
I sent it. I found it, and I didn't type the whole entire fucking thing out.
Well, pulls up the page, it'll be sufficient.
I have it open.
Copy and paste it. Okay.
I don't think it's going to let you post it in the comments.
On YouTube, it won't let you on Facebook or Twitter. It might not on YouTube either.
Well, I'm at least going to try.
If you can't, I sent a screenshot to the group. I don't know how we're supposed to deal with that if it doesn't.
Hit post it.
Well, this
but then there's also this.
No, it didn't. It didn't post. It only posted YouTube.
Okay, I'm gonna do this then.
Well, it's on YouTube. There you go.
The link is on YouTube. This article is from 2016.
Bam!
It's fucking insane, and it won't let you post it anywhere.
It's on the video
YouTube.
now. They can't do shit
Yeah,
about
YouTube, Discord, and the Slack. I think that's it.
So when I posted it, it made it for a few minutes, and then when it got flagged in the chat, whenever I was posting it, sending it to Chelsea, they secretly deleted it within a few minutes. No notification, nothing. Like, I've never seen that before.
No, I was really mad because he sent it like towards the end of last week's show, and I'm just like, God damn it. And then it actually turned out to be more relevant this week. So, and I'm glad now because it's not something we've already presented, and now everybody has an opinion on it. But we were already talking about all of this, and now I just see a flood of Facebook talking about things like they know, like they've been watching it the whole time. And
people think I'm being cute when I call it fascist book. I'm not. I'm being literal.
I agree with you there.
It refused to post this one in the comments as well. So I'll just pop
I
that on
wasn't
screen.
sure about that. That's what I thought. I went ahead and obfuscated it, and I was able to post that on Facebook, but I never initially posted the raw link.
Facebook actually had to admit in court that their fact checkers were a deeply conservative opinion think tank.
I'm sharing the screenshot on the group and on Femtifa.
Awesome.
And so those facts are not facts.
I imagine
FBI affidavit asserted that Azov Battalion, I don't know how to pronounce it, is believed to have participated in training and radicalizing United States-based white supremacy organizations.
Yeah, they're talking about going over there and fighting on behalf of them during this battle. Battle war, whatever keywords we don't want to call it, but that's I mean, the same shit happened whenever with the war in Syria. I know there was like some German biker gangs. I think they might have been. I don't know if they were neo-Nazis or not. But you see them like slugging their rifles like through the desert, still wearing their biker vests and shit. It's like I'm sure you're gonna see similar shit going on over there. They're gonna cross in through a bordering country.
I mean, I'm all for Nazis lining up as ducks on a duck shoot.
Well, I kind of wonder if that's why the Russians. So some of the Ukrainian separatists, I'm sure they didn't give a shit. They were going to take whoever they could back and use them. But from some of the stuff I read, like the Russians were doing similar things. Not that they were seeking out Nazis or whoever. It was just they were for their cause, and so they're going to back them. Whether or not it's because they're going to put them in the shit against higher odds, and maybe they're more likely to die because of it, I think would be, sort of a twisted irony to that. But I think that is it's just a culture problem that we the U.S. have helped perpetuate, along with create.
I would like to point out something that hasn't been pointed out yet here recently, and that is there was a UN vote to make a worldwide criminalization of Nazism, neo-Nazism, all things of the fascist nature. And while several countries didn't vote for it, many did. But there were two countries that voted actually against it, and that was Ukraine and the U.S.
Yeah,
I'm surprised that it wasn't three countries. I'm surprised Poland wasn't in it as well.
No shit.
I mean, Poland is also about as pretty fucking close as you can get.
I mean, maybe he was sick that day.
You know what caused it? It was all those Polish jokes. It just got to them, and they flipped this, and they took it out in the worst way possible. No, I'm kidding. I do kind of wonder.
So, like, I have a live stream going right now. These coverage of this Russia thing, and well, now they're talking about Trump, but. I mean, they've showed like a grand total of like 3 still images and like 10 seconds of video out of Ukraine, and they're trying to paint a whole picture around that.
Right. One of the things I was surprised was when they was talking about like I don't know. Wait, so for one, you know, just like everybody else, like I didn't expect Russia to actually do an invasion. I thought it was going to be, you know, some dick wagging and call it a day. But as long as they were doing that, sure, I know it's not a complete surprise, I guess, by now, but I didn't think they would actually do. I didn't think it would carry on this far. One of the questions I did want to ask was, I wondered how much our withdrawal from Afghanistan impacted that decision to go forward with that.
I mean, yeah, we don't have thousands of troops in Asia anymore.
No, but I mean, just that we highly publicize the fact that we're pulling out of Afghanistan, that Russia would use that to know that we're not, just as an added guarantee that we would not reinitiate the shit again, at least on such a short timeline, without, you know, the people shitting further on Biden, which, you know, fuck Biden, but.
Yeah.
I mean, I realize that that's the way we all do, but I was about to say, but thank you for saying it like an adult.
Well, I'm never clever with my words.
Sometimes he's not an adult either.
It's true.
Same.
I mean, I wouldn't exactly call Let's Go Brandon clever.
It's really not.
This is also true. I bet you're triggered, liberal.
I just need my hot dogs delivered on time. That's all I'm saying.
Oh man, that was such an issue last night.
We're not trolls.
You know it.
He can meet you.
And you know it's bad when liberals roll their eyes.
Right.
Whoa, 2 top Manhattan prosecutors on the Trump case resigned. That's interesting American news.
It probably isn't as dramatic as it sounds. They probably just didn't get paid.
Well, it's the prosecutors. It's the people that are supposed
you said the prosecutor. Okay, my bad.
Yeah. I wonder
what kind of threats led up to that.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Yep.
I imagine they started looking into the money laundering and like, oh shit.
I mean, there's probably a lot of higher level politicians that are also tied up in.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And business owners, of course.
When the evidence is that obvious, who else is getting fucked by this? You know?
Mm-hmm. Oh, wait a minute. That ties back to me.
How is Trump making headlines right now with the fucking invasion of Ukraine happening? This is literally a stream about Ukraine. Why are they talking about
Trump? This is completely hypothetical, but I've been thinking about this. And this is not a praise, obviously, because he's repulsive. But he is so rich and full of shit that maybe he actually quelled fucking tensions when he was in office with other countries because he knows how he likes his dick sucked and he knows how to make other dudes happy also.
You put it into your own words, but that's basically what I was trying to convey on the phone earlier.
Okay. I
think that was Trump's whole approach with Putin.
I'm just saying Manafort was holding the camera.
That must be the only reason we never went to war when that fucking douchebag was in office. It was the only good thing that he, it was just that he can talk stupid rich guy talk.
No, nobody gave a shit. Putin was just, he was a puppet for Putin. It's like, he wasn't gonna...
I think he was more than a puppet for Putin.
Hand up the ass kind of thing?
I don't know if I want to use the word lover, but...
He has a sweater with the two of them on it. It's a Christmas sweater.
I can go get it real quick.
That is beautiful.
Do.
They're riding a polar bear.
She's like, go get it right.
They're riding a polar bear. Is Putin shirtless?
Hey, let's bring the vodka back.
If only I had some.
Because we can't get it. We can't get it anymore.
The closest thing I have is some grown-up popsicles in the freezer. Nice. Fuck you.
Golly.
This is the coolest empty bottle that I've ever had. Man, I don't know if we're ever gonna get to buy this again. I could sell this for $1,000 maybe.
You might want to do it. We'll fucking grab a bottle when you go back into work. See if
Rob would use it as a vase. He'd be like, this is the last vodka bottle, and I didn't even get to taste the vodka.
I sure didn't.
They make good vodka. It was really good. We were buying that for a long time.
Time out. Did you just really have to specify that the Russians make good vodka?
Yeah, I know. But
Yes.
It was weird that I found it in Oklahoma. So, but now we can't get it. It's been like
That's
a year,
fair.
year and a half.
Oh, really? Damn.
I wonder how much of a run there is on vodka.
And
Probably quite a lot.
see if you can order.
Okay, so right now, Fox News has the founder of an organization called Just Point on. I'm going to Google Just Point and see if he's a Nazi.
Can you not find it?
I didn't find it. I'm wondering if I threw it away, but I do have a picture of it. So
Why would you throw it away?
for obvious reasons.
Because you thought that this nightmare would end? This nightmare never ends.
Because when people see it, they think it's John Candy and John Malkovich riding a polar bear naked. Here, I'll just.
I mean, that would still be a fun party topic.
Right. Like, that sounds like fun.
Here, I'll post it. I do have a picture somewhere of it because I accidentally changed it to my profile picture the other night. So it exists.
It exists. I think it arrived like after Christmas when he initially
No, it's
ordered
before it because I wore it to your family's Christmas.
Oh, that was wait, was that my mom or my dad?
Definitely your dad.
That was the last time my father saw me.
You never said it was me.
And he's wearing this Putin fucking Trump sweater at Christmas. That was the first time they ever met him, and that was the last time they ever met him.
Wow.
Dude, that's dope.
That's funny. I did not remember that. That is fucking priceless. Okay.
That is funny.
I love learning things I didn't know.
This, like, looking for information on Western media is like looking for a fucking needle in a haystack.
Yeah. Always gets interesting. Western media don't want to cover that.
NATO condemns Russia's, quote, brutal act of war in Ukraine.
How
What's
dare
it-
Oh yeah, the
It's like a
Russians
bar
captured
scene where nobody
Chernobyl
minds
today.
their own fucking business.
I want to know, at what point is it considered an act of war versus considered
Military action.
well, a humanitarian fucking aid to the people there in Ukraine who are in those two independent regions that are ethnic Russians going, fuck, we're getting shelled every fucking day. Help. Okay, like if it was a scenario of the United States stepping in to help one of our neighbors. They were being assaulted by whoever was on the other side. People would look at that different, but it's Russia stepping in, I see it as humanitarian aid to a certain extent of taking them on as a protectorate.
Well, but that's not the NATO narrative, because the only thing that's considered humanitarian aid is NATO backed.
That. Like, if you're not NATO, then it must not be to help the people there. Like, what?
I mean, why would they step away from vilifying Russia at this point?
You should probably delete that on Third Eye.
Why?
Because
my sweater?
Yes.
Why? No, I haven't.
I'm a person that wears sweaters.
No,
I think it's a good place for that.
But okay, well, I mean, he might listen. I just remember an experience that we all had the other day. So I felt that it would be taken in a different context.
Oh, they totally would have thought it was John Candy and John Malkovich.
I'm not going to say what I'm thinking.
And tell you about what's playing out in Kiev right now. Those images clearly doesn't look good for Ukraine right now. And it was only a matter of time, because with no military support coming in, Gaurav, for Ukraine, there is a concern how Ukraine can put up a fight. Ukraine's why all through the day on India Today have been saying, give us military support, help us, send us military arms, send us aid. That's not happened. It's only been sanctions endlessly on Russia.
They didn't get weapons and ammo.
We've lost
that's what I'm saying. Like, time out, haven't we been arming them for like fucking
70 years? Hey, even Germany sent them some helmets.
Goodness.
Is reporting from Mariupol, eastern Ukraine, where there have been multiple incidents and reports of bombing and explosion that's been reported. We're putting out on our screens right now what's playing out in Kiev. From early this morning, it's 8:30 here in India. In Kiev, it's about 5 in the morning. So you can imagine that right now, and the entire night sky there lit up with a series of bombs, with a series of missiles.
Well, that was weird.
Okay, we're getting you these images, as you can see there, from Kiev, and the explosions that are rocking the capital city right now. Remember that it's about 5 a.m. in the morning right now, so residents haven't had a wink of sleep. They're very, very concerned for obvious reasons about.
Yeah, I mean, obviously
shit about sleep right now.
Yeah, right. I don't know. This video format is I'm done with it. Fucking ads on it.
It's just B-roll footage from the Iraq War. I'm kidding.
It's been known to happen. Shit being reported that, was actually footage from elsewhere. But
Cuba. Or should I say Miami? Same thing, right?
Right. I mean, we're only talking maybe 150, 200 miles. I know it's 90 miles off of Key West, but it's also quite a drive from Miami down the overseas highway.
So I know when Belarus was talking about hosting nuclear weapons for Russia, that 2 weeks prior, the U.S. had announced, I don't know why you would do this, but the U.S. had announced they're sending their stealth bombers with nuclear payloads to Britain. I don't know why you would post a story about that.
Yeah, right.
Need?
So one thing that I'm noting on here in this video, well, first of all, there was like a lights out order given tonight, right? Like everybody was supposed to turn off their lights at 11 p.m. local time. But I mean, Putin said in his speech when he basically declared war, civilians were gonna more or less be safe, right? And any videos that I've seen from civilian areas have been, you know, more or less what you're seeing in this video, which
They're
is
far
not
off
much.
airstrikes.
Right. Nothing happening there.
Yeah,
Right.
from what I saw, that they targeted industrial areas and like, I mean, obviously the airport and things like that. They want to disable any.
Well, the airport they didn't even want to disable from the sounds of it. They wanted to be able to use it to bring in more troops. Or at least that's what the West was claiming. I think they probably would have wanted to destroy it because they can bring plenty of troops over land.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too is, so along with those stealth bombers, the U.S. likes to brag a lot, and then we quiet down before conflict happens. But a few weeks prior, they were talking about what they were sending over, what. Well, I mean, because honestly, I don't think anybody expected it to actually happen, and so like, oh shit, well we played our cards already, but like, but we could intervene. It's, I don't know. The U.S. is sitting on their hands because they have to.
Agreed.
Just like China is. I mean, not that.
Oh my God, yeah, dude. China's kind of been funny to watch because they're told about what they're saying. Piss off Russia, and they don't want to piss off NATO.
They don't want to escalate this outside. Like,
Right.
I mean, everybody sees this as a local issue that could be something much, much worse. When you have a country that's hosting nuclear weapons just in case of a retaliatory measure, rightfully so. Well, I don't know if that's right, but
that's what I saw reported today too. Yeah.
It's the biggest stick they got, so why not hold it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting, but then we're also placing, strategic stealth bombers in Britain just in case.
Yeah, right.
And we did it first before Belarus said they were gonna, if something did happen, that they would retaliate. It's like we laid our card down. Ukrainian Dancing with the Stars.
I'm gonna unmute this. Oh, and I must have. No, it is.
2014. I honestly am emotional. It's been a little difficult, but I want to go back home, and that I have way too. I realized that I have a different passport, and my family is far away, and what I'm realizing is that my friends whose kids are here, and whose moms, dads are here, and elderly people are here, and they can't just escape.
Yeah, they can't. One of the people he's describing, the people who are trapped in Ukraine, is Zoe Anutu. She is a 27-year-old student who has been in Ukraine since 2019, and she posted this a little earlier today.
The situation is very tense right now. As you can see, I'm at the mall, and the mall is empty. Like, the state of emergency has been declared for people in Ukraine. And, oh my word, let me not fall here. Like, it's so scary. I'm so scared, guys.
Yeah, no shit. I'd be scared too if I was
Zoe
back in
Anutu
Ukraine.
joins us live now. For
Yeah.
someone who's scared, Zoe, it's amazing. You seem very together and calm, but I know it's got to be very hard for you as you try to figure out your next moves. Are you safe right now?
Right now, I'm in a position where I can't say I'm safe because I'm alone in my apartment right now as we speak, because we're trying to get our way out of our city, because my city right now is in the eastern part of Ukraine where everything right now. And we got the confirmation from our president today, the Zambian president, that we should evacuate from this place. But now, unfortunately, I cannot move out of my city because all the transportation to a different city has been closed up. So I'm just stuck in my apartment, not knowing what to do. And today, actually, rather yesterday, when I went to the mall in the morning, all the ATMs were not working for me to get any money to buy foodstuffs and everything. Not until later in the afternoon, as you saw in the video, where I had access to see people withdrawing money from the ATMs. And that actually took so long because there were a lot of queues where people were struggling to just get a little money in order to get food from the stores. This is really
Zoe,
frightening and really scary.
I want to give a little bit of
we're
context to that. The reason they have to pull cash out to buy food from their local stores is, at least according to the West, due to Russian cyber attacks. So, like, a lot of card systems.
So what? Yeah. Okay.
A lot of card systems were apparently impacted. But yeah, I don't know. If I was in Ukraine, I would feel very much the same way.
Right.
You know, they have no real way to know if Putin's gonna stick to his word and, you know, like, do his best to keep civilians out of harm's way. And I mean, on top of that, like, do you trust the soldiers to have that, like, judgment, I guess?
Oh, come on, that 19-year-old that's operating the the mortar launcher, or that's firing artillery shells. I'm sure he aims right every time.
Right.
Right.
Or, you know, like, bad intel happens and wrong coordinates get fired upon. I mean, mistakes do happen, and warfare is warfare. But yeah, I don't know. Like, it would be impossible to be in the middle of that, and it sounds like it's so much just like apprehension and tension. You know, like, not to say that there hasn't been things going on today. Obviously, there has. But I think that the West is trying to paint it into this panic picture, and I don't know that it should be, at least to the extent that it is.
And so,
of course, we should be sympathetic with the citizens of Ukraine.
But much like here, we have to differentiate between the people and the government.
Right.
I think one of the good things, or one of the silver linings on this invasion compared to something earlier in like 2008, and so I kind of hinted at this earlier when I was talking about sourcing, not weapons, but specifically what I had read about, I was still surprised about, is that it was U.S. companies that were manufacturing some of the bulletproof vests, the Kevlar suits, and things like that that Russians were using for Russia, for their military. And the difference between so when they invaded Georgia, they realized how outdated their equipment was. You had soldiers on the ground using their fucking cell phones to call in whoever, call in airstrikes. They had no communication. Like it was all outdated. And that led to a lot of mistakes. And so fortunately, they've updated that since then. So hopefully that reduces civilian casualties when doing shit like this?
For me, I think that us talking about the civilian casualties between these two countries and what is actually happening right now, and ignoring the fact that this is directly our fault, then I don't know why we're even I mean, I've showed you screenshots of other people talking to me, acting like we're defending things. And the fact of the matter is that we can listen to the details of it culturally from someone else, and that was very valuable and that was good. But at the same time, what we're not focusing on is that this is happening because of us.
Yeah.
And we're acting like we're just reacting to it, and we're not. This is the plan the entire time. And until we realize that
Russia
involvement in this was completely planned from the beginning, then we're not really going to have any accurate take on it.
Ukraine is kind of like Israel in that it's our foothold in the region where we absolutely can't get one.
Yeah.
So
I just think it's
and it's been that way since the time of the fucking kulaks.
It's our fault that we're here right now. It is the U.S.'s fault that this is happening right now. It's just that no one else knows that, and everybody else has an opinion pretending that that is not the background of all of this.
Sorry, Rob, I didn't hear you.
I mean, to be fair, it usually is.
Well, and I know, but that's why I'm saying that. I'm just saying what I'm hearing a lot in the conversation about this is that we're talking about two foreign countries. One's good, one's bad. And I mean, even the ones that are not for Ukraine can still sound like one's good, one's bad. The reality of the situation is that we're not choosing sides here. We're saying that the U.S. has been involved through the CIA with Ukraine for 70 years, and everyone's acting like it's a foreign issue, and it's not.
Yeah, I mean, the U.S. specifically has had their hands in Ukraine since the time of the kulaks, and that was what, 1937?
No, I heard you say that earlier. Like a few minutes ago, I was asking what you had started to talk, and I didn't hear you initially.
Oh, I think I literally just said it over.
Okay.
That's what I was starting to say was that, I was starting to say that the U.S. has had their hands in Ukraine since the time of the kulaks, and I mean, that's still the case.
1953.
And it makes sense that when the Soviet Union fell, that the U.S. had to get their hands in there as deeply as they could. And I mean, now we've gotten to the point of backing literal neo-Nazis because they're anti-Russian and for nothing else alone.
Yeah, that's kind of why. So one of the reasons I brought up like the homophobia is to kind of like, it's like you can't pick a side, like, but
right,
you have to pick your context and why things are going the way that, like, you can't just do it on just whatever the cultural mentality is for whatever country. Like that doesn't line up. If you do that, you're going to be upset with whatever side you choose.
But that's what they're doing. I mean, it's like they're picking a political party again, but it has nothing to do with them, and they don't know what they're talking about. Whereas, like, I mean, you don't always have to pick a side. Obviously, we haven't picked a side because those sides are all to the right. So,
I mean, the whole point of this is to kind of show like patriotism.
But it seems like it's a right-left situation again, but except this time they know even less about it than they did when it was voting for elections.
Accurate.
I mean, literally overnight, I started to see people that I know in real life that do not talk about politics start to act.
That probably can't point out Russia or Ukraine on a map.
What?
I said people that probably can't point to Russia or Ukraine on a map.
Let alone Moldova, Crimea, any of those.
Hey, Trisha, do you remember the hot old guy?
Which one? Oh, at the bar?
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Awful. Awful.
Oh
Awful.
no, bad takes on this?
Awful. Awful.
God damn it. That's
Very
disappointing.
emotional. Very emotional. He acts like he's been to Ukraine. Which is like, you're like, cool if you had like a real take, but like he's very much so it's
I've
just like,
seen it. It's just as cold as you would imagine.
I'm just like, okay, cool. If you have, but like, where are you shitting on the U.S. in this? That's all I want to see. I just want to make you acknowledge that the U.S. is not going to fix whatever it is that you think. Like, can we just get to that?
Yeah, the U.S. created the problem by Nazifying the fuck out of Ukraine since 1953.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to start.
This government is not going to fix
I
it
just
by
realized I asked you on the live stream if you remember the hot old guy, and then you did remember which one. So
it took a minute. And the brain connected like at the yellow brick road. Yes, that one.
That is amusing. There's a question, thoughts on World War III, and my particular take on it is it's speculative, and I'm not much interested in the speculation.
What I will say is this, though. I think that we are seeing, much like we did before World War I or World War II, we're seeing the world take sides. So, I mean, could that escalate? Yes, but I don't want to think about that possibility.
Neither do I, especially not with the amount of disinformation and outright lies and the general ignorance of people going on, as per usual, but still.
It could de-escalate again for a little bit, just as quickly as it escalated.
And every country is running their own psyops campaign.
And specifically, I think with the quote, I don't know what weapons World War III will be fought with. I don't like that quote. It just sounds cliche to me. But if we're thinking in those terms, I think that if we don't know what terms World War III will be fought in, that sometimes those countries are just feeling it out still because they don't know either. Because we have different technology, there's different reasons for them to kind of poke themselves and then pull back a little bit because we're not all entirely sure how our technology could combat against others all of the time. So this could still take a while.
And the good part is everybody's avoiding a direct conflict. China's, kept themselves. They won't, they're careful about the verbiage, everything, of course. The U.S., for the most part, I mean, we do this show all the time. We're like, oh, yeah, we'll just back this. It's like a knee-jerk reaction. U.S.'s standpoint, they can't help themselves. And then Russia, they don't. I think they're being very careful when they chose to actually pull the trigger on this to invade there. I mean, I wasn't aware of how much they were taking an economic hit on it, but they're still doing it. So, but they're still being careful. They're treading lightly as far as pissing off NATO.
Right. I think they're going to be very specific in where they target. And I think Talia hit the nail on the head earlier when she said that, it's only going to end up actually probably going to that point of NATO involvement if he were to attack one of the nations that's in NATO where they would be obligated to get involved. Then I could see it possibly developing to World War III, but I don't honestly see Putin doing that. I think he's
like she said, Putin is not a dumb man.
Right. Like, I think he's going to continue to be very specific about where he's bombing, shelling, sending soldiers, whatever, because in the end, he wants the economic side of shit to work out well, too. He wants to keep that oil pipeline. He wants to fucking be able to continue trade and probably cut back on some of them fucking sanctions. I don't see him going and attacking a NATO country.
Sure.
No.
Yeah, and he has his card to play, and that is supplying gas to Europe. I mean,
Yes.
that's how he gets people to listen.
Right. That is.
You know, I think that the real reason that Ukraine wanted that concession from Germany, to be honest, is that there is already pipelines going through Ukraine and they get a cut.
Yeah.
I'm just fucking saying.
And they're not going to get a cut on this one. It bypasses Ukraine.
Right.
So they're probably salty about that. But I mean, if they were drawing the line at we're not going to run this pipeline through Nazi territory, I can't blame them.
And Ukraine's sort of its own. I don't know. It's another Cyprus. You know, they've sort of cracked down on Cyprus as far as, you know, it's more. Don't get me wrong. There's a bunch of shell companies obviously operate through there, just not as freely as they once did. But there's still quite a bit of money that's laundered through Ukraine, as I assume, like any. You have fringe countries with that many trade embargoes and things running along the border, that just naturally necessitates that kind of enterprise. You're just going to have that, and U.S. takes advantage for sure.
Don't mind me. I had to close the window, so like climbing over dogs to get to it. And now Sarah's looking at me like, fucker, you were my pillow. I can be again.
Yeah, so one of the documentaries I watched, you definitely have people pretending to or well, they're like, don't acknowledge me as a volunteer, don't acknowledge me as, I mean, because they have militia fighters, whatever they can gather, that they technically can't have as fighters doing that.
Right. And there's the sweater.
Oh, yeah. I had to share this sweater, by the way.
I'm so glad you did too. Dude, that is fucking epic. Where did you get that?
Amazon.
Okay. That's fucking funny. Dude. I dig it.
I don't know where it's at.
Anyway, I still gotta eat dinner, so I'm not. Obviously, you have the controls too, so I'm not gonna like end the stream or anything, but I am gonna take off.
Right on. Go eat. You earned it.
Yeah.
It's a long day. Thank you for helping me set up the solar today. That was dope of you.
And I have space for activities in my office studio thing.
Right? That was a lot of work too. That looks nice in there with everything organized. I dig it.
I even actually I can't say I vacuum.
The vacuuming was done. Thank you, Emily.
Yes.
Well,
but, yeah, anyway, I'm glad that we got to talk about this. Obviously, there's a whole lot to the situation, and I'm sure we'll still be talking about it next week, although it probably won't be for the whole stream.
right. This was a lot to dissect tonight, and I'm glad we got to do it.
Yeah, I definitely learned a lot. This was definitely a lot of fun. Because I'm pretty ignorant of a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, that was so helpful to have Talia on and be able to pick her brain about the things going on there and get some context that none of us were aware of, as well as some history lesson there. Because all of that does come into play. You know, this isn't some recent development. This has been growing and coming to a head for decades.
Yeah, literally. And I mean, this conflict that we're acting, when I say we, I mean Western media, this conflict that we're acting like just started today with Putin's advancement has been going on for 8 years.
the royal we. I was doing that a lot too. Can't help myself.
Dude, it's such a hard habit to break.
Right. Especially in that context of attaching oneself to the government. And it's like, no, I would like to not be looked at in relation to what this fucking government does. So we have to stop calling it our government, our military. It's not ours. It's not under our control, or it wouldn't be doing the fucked up shit that it is.
No, Natalie, I get it. When I first started I was so glad when Talia finally started like speaking up about it, because like when I was doing my own research, it's hard to find anything that's not approved by, the State Department or the head of CNN or what the fuck ever. And they're all just beating the war drums. That's all it is. It's fucking chest beating or fucking dick wagging, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the entire Western perspective on it. Which really surprises me in terms of Germany, but I'll leave that alone, I guess. But didn't they say like never again? I mean, the fact that Germany is capitulating to what Ukraine wants at all is mind blowing. Let alone that Germany is supporting Ukraine.
Right, that I find just revolting.
But Germany has had its own very real recent problem with Nazification as well. I mean, obviously they can't be as blatant about it. Germany is.
Well, Germany wasn't sending weapons over. They were trying to they have a vested interest in keeping the peace.
Yeah.
The U.S. I mean, I think it's because like the U.S. doesn't. They're like, well, we thought you were pointing a gun at us, 3,000 miles away. We take offense to that, and so we're going to just steamroll your country. Fuck it. There's
operating like what? We thought you had a weapon.
I did again. Sorry.
Started firing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's not forget that when Western media started all this discussion about Russia and Ukraine, so much of it was like, I totally lost my train of thought there. Wow.
They just kind of had, they already had their scripts written because they've been written for the
Yeah.
last 60 years, 70 years.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's like wash, rinse, and repeat at this point, right? When do we, as like citizens of the so-called United States, say enough is enough and stand the fuck up? Like, how, I guess, do we retake and reshape the narrative?
Right.
There was something I didn't have a chance to ask that kind of escaped my mind, but so when Obama was president, he basically signed away the rights to Arctic drilling to Russia, because at the time, we were fracking pretty heavily, and so the U.S. was kind of going more towards that route, and the U.S. had such an abundance of oil, they felt like it wasn't worth the hassle. And I kind of wondered if that would be a point of contention later on. Because like literally there was an agreement with I don't know if it was with the United Nations or what, but they let it when Obama was president, he let it expire in like 2015. And so that was actually kind of the thing that I thought, like back then when I read it, that would cause, I don't know, that would cause a fight between the U.S. and Russia later on. I really didn't expect Ukraine.
Right.
But I also didn't know shit at the time, so, which, reflects me now.
All right. Anyway, I'm hungry.
All right, go eat.
Hi, hungry.
I'm yelling at people, so it's fine.
Hi, yelling at people.
That's what you do. Are you busting a caps lock on them?
Yeah, well, I unfollowed because I knew I was going to get another ban if I kept going. So I stopped.
Well, that's good.
We get enough bans. Fucking Facebook jail time.
People start things with me, and then they act like I started the thing with them. And I'm just like, watch how quickly I can leave. I can. It's fine. So I did. And it's fun.
Save yourself the jail time. There's no bail in Zuckerberg's jail.
And I also don't know them. They said, you're a full-blown, okay, sorry. They said, you're a full-blown communist. And that's apparent, and a Stalin supporter based on your cover photo. And so my cover photo is that bar in Oklahoma City.
Woody Guthrie's
that has no, and so that's what I said because we were at that bar and we were like, who is that other person? Because if you're familiar with that photo at all, you're like, that person doesn't belong there. Who the fuck is that? And so we asked the bartender, and he's like, that's Woody Guthrie. And so I said, well, apparently you're not very familiar with the subject, and that's a local bar. And if you hate me, then you hate Woody Guthrie. So that's what I said to them.
I honestly...
And that was, I don't know. I handled it as long as I could, and then I was like, I'm going to start cussing, so I had to leave.
I honestly thought it was the guitarist from Rage Against the Machine. I had no idea.
I don't post Stalin shit except for that one Bernie meme and my fucking cover photo. Like, I just don't even get it.
Yeah, I was really trying to figure it out, and I mean, it was, or was it Morello or whatever? Or it was because of the hat. That's why I thought.
Well, and for reference, the weird thing is that the person that is calling me a full-blown communist and trying to shame me and telling me that I'm a tool is a blue-haired, not straight cis person. And so I'm just like, okay, the liberals are coming after us now.
You'd think at least they would be aware that,
or at least not be fucking assholes. But no, I'm like, liberal boot harder. You're fucking consorting with neo-Nazi bullshit. That's what this government is doing. And they're like, I'll say they, because I don't know, they're attacking me. And it's not like super hardcore, but I'm just wondering how this is really going to start to go, because this is the first time that I've seen a split this big. That is not involved in, like, I mean, I did a lot of work a long time ago to not have these people on my Facebook friends and stuff. I started cutting people out like 5 years ago. Like, not letting people see anything of mine, and like, only if I fucking like you, you can see any of this. And now, like, overnight, there are a lot of people that I don't want to talk to, or that I don't really feel like they have a grasp on anything. And it's fucking creepy, because it's like, I don't need to take a stance on what the problem is over there. What I'm taking a stance on is why we're talking about it, because we shouldn't have anything to do with this, but we are the reason that this is happening. And now everybody's acting like we should just do something about it.
Yeah, like
when we've been making it happen. Like, I just don't know.
So far, my former friends
have
just been quietly defriending me. They won't argue with me or anything. So I guess I'm lucky in that regard. Kind of wish they would. Like, if you're on your way out, you might as well just, air your grievances.
Right. Like, here, fuck you, and this is why. Be an adult.
I mean, who knows? They could have deactivated their account, but I doubt it.
It's one of those things where, it's like, okay, if you disagree that hardcore and don't want to have a conversation about it, then I don't know what to tell you, because it's not just a difference of political perspective. It's a difference in ethics. And That matters to me. I'm sure that matters to you too. So if those people are failing in those ethical standards, then do you really want them around? Fuck. No loss. You know? Like, it's their loss. They could have stuck around and learned something, maybe grown as a person. But if you can't make them, they don't want to.
Yeah, I kind of wish, I don't know, on some people that I just never looked at their profile or anything at all, just to remain ignorant. So I was telling Chelsea about a cousin of mine that owns, he actually bought off another cousin of mine. It's a small ammo company. He makes ammo and everything, and he'll post things on occasion. My dad will share it, but it was just his personality and everything. From what I see that he's posted is just dog shit. Just not a real big thinker. It's the nicest way I could say it.
Yeah, there's a lot of those on the interwebs these days, and it's kind of sad. Like, come on, you know, that fatty tissue in your head, please use it. Here, have some resources. Like, that's what I don't get about, you know, people forming opinions without actually looking into something, because you're only supposed to form an opinion based on knowledge, based on facts, and go, okay, this is what's happening here. Therefore, my stance on it is this. You know, like, you can't draw conclusions of my stance is this if you don't have anything to fucking base it on. Most of them are just basing it on whatever the fucking TV tells them to think.
Willful and loud ignorance is more of a pandemic than COVID-19 could ever be.
Right. It really is.
Well, yeah, look at the statistics here.
I'm getting fucking chilly here, so.
Oh, you're chilly? Oh, you're chilly?
We're
Yes.
like the
Dude,
warmest
when you
room
have,
in the
like,
house, so this is
I'm
really
messing
nice.
with you. I'm messing with you. But it
I know.
is 24
But
degrees.
Get
fair,
the cheese and
but
crackers.
it's really harsh when you have like a 35 to 40 degree average temperature drop from day to night. It hits you hard. And your weather there has been quite fucking temperamental too, so I know you can relate. But it happens every day. You go from needing the fucking AC during the day to needing the heat on at night. And it's like, what the fuck?
Oh yeah, I didn't buy my pack of cigarettes today. I was gonna do that, but I figured I wouldn't because I didn't want to take the truck in the snow. Or well, there's no snow, there's just ice. But
I need to get weed tomorrow.
technically, I didn't finish my project today, so maybe this weekend I'll get it and buy a pack. It's my reward for finishing this forever project.
Cigarettes are bad for you and they're dumb, and it's not a reward. It's a fucking murder weapon.
But if you're using it on yourself, does that really count?
Yeah, it's no AK-12, but
It's only 8 minutes at a time of our lives, potentially. I'm about to light another one right now. So.
I'll just rub it in.
Well, I mean, if I could pass you one, I totally would. But, you know.
I know. It's probably better I don't. I'll make up for it.
This
My puppy.
this seems like a good place to have ended our stream a while back.
I've seen your message now. Yeah, I was sort of having the same thought, but
Yeah, we're at 2.5 hours.
yeah, and we don't have anything else to
just
say.
shooting the
So let's
shit.
go bitch. Let's go bitch at this one guy that we know. His name starts with a. We know what it starts with. Are we going now? God, I
Yeah,
feel like I
we can do
live on
that.
video now.
You just
I feel like I got
you
the
got to give me
government
a second
with me all the time.
to find
What?
the thing and the stuff, and then I can do the thing. There we go. Okay, I have to screen share. You got to remember, I'm learning my way around this software still. There we go. All right, thank you everyone for joining us. This has been fucking awesome. We will see you next week. Anybody else want to say anything before I get this music playing?
Bye, bitches.
There we
Have
go.
a good one.
All right. Yeah, you have to click share system audio, Trisha. Oh my God, now it's not giving. There it is. Okay. This is too much. Aha. Yes, share, motherfucker. All right. Now, there we go. All right. That was awkward. You're probably used to our awkward sign-offs by now. Have a good night, y'all.
We don't make mistakes. We have happy accidents. Just don't worry about it. Learn how to use